That was Nancy Walker's reality for 11 long years at the Apex Flight Research Center. Every morning at 4:45 a.m. she'd wheel her cleaning cart past hangar doors taller than houses, past jet engines that hadn't even been named yet, past dreamers too busy chasing altitude to notice the woman sweeping beneath their feet. "Morning, Miss Nancy," Earl the security guard would mutter, barely looking up from his thermos. Nancy would reply with her gentle, tired voice, "Morning, Earl," and continue her invisible dance through the corridors of aviation excellence. But what nobody knew, what nobody cared to discover, was that this quiet woman with the weathered hands and kind eyes held secrets that could shake the very foundation of everything they thought they knew about flight. One morning in Hangar 4, two junior engineers were live-streaming a behind-the-scenes tour for their aviation blog. The camera swung around just in time to catch Nancy bending to mop up a coffee spill. "There it is," one of them chuckled, "the most advanced flight tech in the world and someone's grandma cleaning up aisle 5. The laughter that followed was sharp, cutting through the morning air like a blade. Nancy didn't flinch. She kept mopping, quietly humming to herself. They didn't know that 40 years ago she flew reconnaissance missions that never made the papers. They didn't know her left shoulder still ached from a bailout in '91. They didn't know she could name every aircraft in the hangar by its engine sound alone. All they saw was a mop. Later that morning, Nancy paused to admire a prototype jet, sleek, silver, shaped like speed itself. Her reflection in its polished fuselage was warped and weary, but still, she smiled. "Beautiful bird," she whispered. "Don't touch it," snapped a voice behind her. It was Preston Given, son of the center's board chairman, clad in a flight suit that cost more than Nancy made in 3 months. "One scratch on that and your pension won't cover the polish." Nancy nodded and backed away. "Didn't mean no harm." He smirked. "Stick to floors, Grandma. Leave the skies to us." More laughter. Louder this time. Nancy turned without a word and pushed her cart down the hangar, each wheel creaking like an old song that only she could hear. That afternoon, the cafeteria buzzed with stories of Preston's latest simulator triumph. Nancy sat alone with her folded sandwich and an apple wrapped in a paper towel. A trainee accidentally knocked her tray to the floor. "Oops, my bad," he said, not stopping. The apple rolled under a table. Nancy picked it up, brushed it off and bit into it anyway. Someone snapped a picture of her doing exactly that. By evening, the photo was on the center's intranet, labeled "Fueling the Next Great Janitor Mission." The laughter echoed even in her empty break room. She didn't cry, not yet, but as she sat staring at the patch on her old canvas jacket, a faded emblem of the Phantom Raven Squadron, her fingers trembled. "They don't know who you were," she whispered to herself. But deep down she feared they'd already decided who she was. The next morning brought fresh humiliation. Nancy arrived to find a dozen people clustered around a screen in the break room. On the monitor, the photo of her eating the bruised apple had gone viral inside the company, now captioned "Lunch of Champions." One in turn added fake airplane noises over the image. Another played the Top Gun theme and mimicked flying a mop like a fighter jet. Nancy said nothing. She filled her bucket with fresh water and headed for Hangar 2. Outside, a group of trainees lounged near a trainer jet, all sons and daughters of military brass, defense contractors or tech billionaires. Their flight suits looked brand new, their confidence even newer. "Heads up, here comes Maverick's grandma," someone whispered. One of them, a girl with a braid so tight it could snap steel, called out, "Hey Nancy, do you need air clearance for that mop?" More laughter. Nancy kept walking, but then Preston appeared, flanked by his usual entourage. He raised his phone and began filming. "Hey folks, today's flight school tip. Don't fly while old or while holding a mop." He grinned and turned the camera to Nancy. "So tell us, Miss Walker, ever flown anything more advanced than a floor buffer?" Nancy paused, looked straight into the lens. "Yeah," she said softly, "but those planes had more class than you." A few people chuckled. Even one of Preston's followers stifled a smile. Nancy continued on, but not before someone tossed a paper airplane at her feet, its wings scribbled with "Janitor Airlines." That afternoon, someone hung a mock flight schedule on the bulletin board titled, "Nancy's Routes." Each destination was a pun. Mopland, Dusty Ridge, Soap City. Preston passed by with a small drone buzzing just over Nancy's head. "She's got air support now." Nancy reached up and plucked it out of the air with one swift grab, surprising even herself. "Guess you're good for something," he sneered. Nancy placed the drone gently on a workbench. "And you're not," she replied, turning away. The next morning, Nancy found a folded form on her cart, an old-style flight simulation application, dusty and pre-filled. "Hey Miss Nancy, called out Marlin, Preston's loudest crony. You always talk about jets. Why don't you show us what you've got? Nancy blinked. Me? Yeah, Preston said, approaching with a grin too perfect. We pulled some strings. You're in today's sim rotation. What Nancy didn't know, what none of the instructors cared to notice, was that the sim had been rigged. Preston and his buddies had manually altered the settings. Maximum wind shear, delayed instrument readings, inverted controls. It wasn't just difficult, it was near impossible. Inside the simulator, Nancy took the controls with shaky fingers, her heart pounding. Simulator ready, said a voice through the headset. The screen flickered, sky runway takeoff. She eased the throttle. The jet lifted, but something felt wrong. Altitude's jumping, she murmured. What the? The horizon twisted violently. Lights flashed, warnings blared. But her instincts kicked in, decades of buried reflexes. Compensate left, she whispered. Counter-roll. Feather the throttle. Outside, the crowd watched in stunned silence. On screen, the jet spun, dipped, then plunged into pixelated terrain. Crush. Groans, then cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, Preston said, bowing, we just witnessed the maiden flight of Janitor Airlines. Nancy climbed out, hands trembling, shirt damp with sweat. The lead instructor, Commander Brett Rowan, was waiting. Fun's over, Miss Walker. Let's leave the cockpit to the capable. He tore the form she'd signed right in front of her. Nancy stood motionless. I almost had it, she said, barely above a whisper. You almost had a disaster, Rowan snapped. Be grateful we let you play pretend. That night, Nancy sat alone on her porch, desert wind brushing her cheeks. She opened a notebook. Inside were old diagrams, aircraft specs, handwritten formulas. She stared long and hard at one labeled X-92 Flight Stability Enhancer Concept by N. Walker. She closed the book. They don't know, she whispered. But soon they will. The next morning, Nancy didn't return to work. Her cart stayed locked in the janitor's closet. A few noticed, most didn't. Preston walked past her usual spot and grinned. Guess she finally got the memo. But her phone had rung that morning. An unknown caller. Walker. The voice was gravelly, familiar. Still flying low, Raven? Nancy froze, her fingers gripping the counter. Don't hang up, the man continued. We saw what happened. I'm not the only one. There's something happening tomorrow. A demo flight. Classified tech. But the pilot assigned, it's Preston's crew. They're not ready. You know it? I know it. Nancy finally spoke. They don't want me there. They'll want you when things go wrong. The sun rose hot and sharp over Apex Flight Center. Journalists in aviator sunglasses sipped lattes. Defense contractors shuffled between demo tents. Camera crews adjusted tripods. Today was showcase day. The new X-92 stealth-capable prototype would fly its first live demo. Nancy stood at the very back, unnoticed in a borrowed ground crew jacket, ball cap pulled low. She watched as the X-92 taxied into place, engines humming with a growl too smooth to be man-made. Commander Rowan, clipboard in hand, addressed the press. Preston Given, Apex's most promising trainee, will take us through the launch protocols. He'll be joined by his co-pilot, Miles Trent. Nancy's eyes narrowed. Miles was shaky in sims, couldn't manage wind correction to save his life. Inside the jet, systems powered up. Clear for takeoff, said the tower. The X-92 roared down the runway, lifted clean and sleek into the desert sky. At first all went smoothly. Then, altitude wavering, Miles's voice crackled over comms. Stabilizers aren't responding. Altitude dropping 2,000 feet per second, Preston panicked. Throttle won't hold. We've got drift, massive lateral drift. The jet pitched violently. Oxygen masks dropped. An emergency alarm blared through the comms. Down below, Rowan's face paled. The crowd hushed. Journalists leaned in. Nancy stepped forward. Get me comms. Rowan turned, laughed. You're not even on staff. Now. The authority in her voice cut like steel. Eloise, now running the backup systems, glanced at Rowan, then handed Nancy the headset. X-92, this is ground command. Patch and Nancy Walker. Nancy's voice came through clear. Boys, listen to me. Disable auto stabilizers. Switch to manual dampening. Pull flaps to 80%. Do it now. Who is this? Preston demanded. Someone who's read the schematic inside your jet. I designed it. Silence. Then, manual engaged. Throttle to 60%. Feather. Now bank east. Let the jet feel the wind, not fight it. The X-92 trembled, groaned, then righted itself. Steady. The crowd erupted. Nancy closed her eyes. Bring her down, boys. Easy. The landing gear lowered. Tires kissed the tarmac. The X-92 stopped just short of the main hangar. Perfect. Everyone froze. Commander Rowan whispered, "Who the hell is she?" Preston stepped out of the cockpit, shaking. He looked across the field. Nancy removed her cap. Someone in the crowd gasped. "It's her," Eloise whispered. "The janitor." Word spread like wildfire. Within minutes, every monitor in the hangar replayed Nancy's voice cutting through chaos. Security footage of her commanding the rescue went viral in under 10 minutes. Nancy Walker, the janitor with the mop, was now the woman who'd guided a $300 million aircraft to safety. Back on the ground, reporters swarmed Rowan. "Who is she? Is she a test pilot? Is this a PR stunt?" Rowan stammered, I don't know. She used to clean the floors." The press had their headline, but Nancy had more than that. She stood beside the aircraft, helmet under her arm, wind catching the ends of her silver hair. Her presence made the engineers stand straighter, made the brass step back. General Anders, visiting from the Pentagon, walked over. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "are you the one who brought them in?" "I am," Nancy replied. He extended his hand. "Then I owe you more than a thank you." Rowan stumbled forward. "This is ridiculous. She's not cleared for flight. She doesn't even belong here." Anders turned. "Son, if she hadn't been here, your prototype would be scrap metal, and you'd be writing eulogies." The crowd hushed again. A low hum built behind them, helicopter blades. A military chopper descended fast. Out stepped a tall woman in dress blues, Aviation Command. She approached Nancy, eyes locked. "Lieutenant Colonel Nancy Walker," she said, "you are hereby reinstated under emergency authority of the United States Air Force. Effective immediately." Nancy blinked. "I thought I was done." The commander smiled. "Legends don't retire. They wait." The silence broke into thunderous applause. Preston stood dumbstruck. Miles cried quietly. Nancy turned to Rowan. "You said I didn't belong." She gestured to the runway. "But the sky doesn't care what job's on your name tag." Days later, Apex's legal department received a sealed envelope. Inside were documents no one expected. Patent files, schematics, prototypes, all tied to early-stage designs of the X-series stabilizers. Signed and dated but never credited. Rowan was the one who'd buried her work 20 years ago, afraid the board wouldn't fund a lead engineer without a degree from MIT or a last name on a brass plaque. He'd taken the credit, claimed her files, silenced her contribution. Until now. At the ceremony, just before stepping on stage, General Winston, Apex's oldest living investor, handed her a thin binder. "These are the original shares we offered to our development team in 2001, he said. "You were listed. Rowan removed you." Nancy opened the binder. Her name next to 22% equity. "I came to clean a hangar," she said softly. "Not own one." Winston nodded. "Well, now you do." Nancy Walker became the largest stakeholder in Apex that day. She didn't fire Rowan, she demoted him to janitor. When asked why, she only said, "He always thought the mop meant nothing. Let him learn otherwise." Nancy didn't take a seat on the board. She created a new wing, an educational program for underprivileged youth and veterans to train in aerospace engineering and aviation. She called it Wings from the Ground Up. When they unveiled the new line of jets the next year, they named them Raven Class. Because some legends don't just fly, they change where the sky begins. Months later, Nancy returned to her old break room, but this time it wasn't empty. A dozen young trainees waited for her, books open, eyes wide. "Will you teach us?" one asked. Nancy smiled. "I'll teach you how to fly, sure. But more importantly, I'll teach you how to land with dignity. Because that's where every flight truly ends." Today, the Nancy Walker Academy for Flight and Engineering stands as a testament to what happens when we look beyond the surface, when we recognize that true worth isn't measured by titles or appearances, but by the depth of knowledge, the strength of character, and the courage to rise when everyone expects you to fall. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight. Sometimes, legends are disguised as janitors, waiting for their moment to remind us all that the sky belongs to everyone who dares to dream of flight.